All right, go.
Okay. Welcome to the February 2026 edition of the HAS monthly meeting. My name's Bob Sewell. I'm the president of the society, and I'd very much like to welcome our speaker this evening, Sammi Burke, from New Mexico State University in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Sammi is a graduate assistant in the anthropology department of the university, and this evening she will discuss the cultural significance of insect imagery within the Mimbres Mongolan culture of southwest New Mexico, dating from about 1000 to 1100 AD. Stylized depictions frequently occur on classical Mimbres pottery, and the creatures played important roles in Pueblo oral traditions, ceremonies, and architecture. Pueblo belief systems incorporated parts of insects and imitated insect behavior as vehicles for mystical power. Sammi is particularly interested in the magic ascribed to ant antlions, I think that's how you pronounce it, their various life phases, larvae, doodlebug, pupa, and adult, created opportunities for Pueblo rituals. Sammi also holds a BA in anthropology with a minor in archaeology from 2025 and is currently pursuing her MA in anthropology, focusing in archaeology and entomology. She is applying her background to conduct interdisciplinary research on arthropod imagery, symbolism, and ritualistic utilization within prehistoric American Southwestern cultures. Her, her experience includes volunteering, excuse me, as a research assistant with the La Frontera project, field work and field school at Cottonwood Spring, Pueblo, and past employment as a research assistant at the New Mexico State University Arthropod Museum. Sammi has received scholarship awards from the Archaeological Research Lab Cultural Management Endowed Fund, Friends of Archaeology, and the HED Graduate Scholarship. Please welcome Sammi Burke. Over to you, Sammi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sammi. This is going to be my presentation. It is Insects and the Mimbres, Bugs, Culture, and Traditions. So a lot of this we already went over, but I'll just retouch on it. I did do my undergraduate through New Mexico State University, receiving my Bachelor's of the Arts in Anthropology with a focus in archaeology. This was relatively recent. Honestly, it was in May. So I also completed archaeological field school through New Mexico State University at Cottonwood Spring, Pueblo, also known as LA 175. I had previous employment with the New Mexico State University Arthropod Museum, where my duties mostly entailed doing community outreach as well as cataloging insects that were held within the collection. I have done volunteer work with Cottonwood Spring Pueblo, as well as the La Frontera project. I am a Marine Corps veteran who served 4 years as a radio operator, and I am a bug enthusiast. So some of the topics that we'll be discussing today are insects and their roles environmentally as well as culturally. We will be talking about the Mimbres Mogollon and who they were. We'll be talking about the classic Mimbres period, as well as Mimbres ceramics that were produced during that period. We will talk about insect imagery that is featured within this ceramic style and how it ties into oral traditions, how imitative magic is used, and how antlions play a role in all of this. So a little bit about my research would be that I am looking into the cultural significance of insects within the prehistoric Southwest, specifically the Mogollon culture, the Mimbres branch in particular. So this is all due to a high frequency of insect imagery being depicted within classic Mimbres black on white ceramics. I aim through my research to find out why this is occurring and Even more specifically, why antlions are so heavily featured within the ceramic style. I want to touch on the importance of interdisciplinary work a little bit. By utilizing interdisciplinary work and using this approach by combining archaeology with entomology, I believe that we can understand aspects of prehistoric cultures and environments that may provide meaning behind imagery, ritual, and oral traditions within the cultures. I also believe that proper identification of insects depicted within these cultures may further provide context behind why they are being depicted. So, what human insect relationships would have been like to help understand the spiritual value that is being placed within these insects that are being featured in the ceramic styles. Technical difficulties. So I want to talk about why insects are important. Insects serve many roles in our environment. They serve as pollinators. They also serve as bioindicators, which is just a fancy way of saying that they're organisms whose status in an ecosystem is used as an indicator to see what kind of ecosystem health there is. They also serve as pest control, with beneficial insects often preying on pest insects and kind of controlling that population. And that being said, some insects are pests themselves and can be found in places that we don't necessarily want them to be, such as food storage. Sometimes we have pest insects that are just living in the environment that kind of create harsh conditions. So this will help our understanding of archaeology. We can help, or they help us understand culture, but they also help us to understand speciation within an area, which is just a way of saying that they help us understand biodiversity within a region. They can also give us some insight into settlement patterns, such as what the cleanliness status was for that settlement and how they were storing food. With cleanliness, a big area to look at would be the presence of certain insects that can help us understand that maybe living conditions might not have been ideal and might not have been so clean. And with food storage, sometimes we can find the remains of insects that would have been feeding on the same food sources that humans were eating. And this could in turn pose as a problem. They also help us to understand environment, which environmental recreation is very crucial to the archaeological field. We can use insects to kind of get an idea as to how climate and living conditions were within that environment, due to the fact that certain insects can't exist within certain climates. They also can give us insight into agriculture, with many insects serving as pollinators. This would help understand what was going on with crop yield and crop cultivation, as well as what was going on with native plants that may have been used medicinally. Getting into the forensic anthropology side of things, they can help us understand mortuary process, with the presence of certain insects being able to be seen as indicators as to how long an individual was deceased before they were interned, or even depending on where these bugs are manifesting, what the cause of death might have been. So how do bugs affect prehistoric Southwestern culture? Insects are frequently featured within oral traditions. The main oral tradition that we're going to be referring to today is going to be a Pueblo origin story. They are also frequently featured within painted ceramics, much like we see within classic Mimbres black on white ceramics. They are used in ceremonies, such as butterfly dances and the presence of certain insect kitsinas. They would have been used to pollinate maize and other beneficial plants, as mentioned. And I believe that this was all depicted through imitative magic throughout different cultural happenings. Getting into who the Mimbres were, they would have been many groups living originally in widespread hamlets that shared cosmological views as well as practices. They would have occupied the Mimbres Valley region of the Mogollon culture area. This would have been primarily western New Mexico into eastern Arizona. And we do see some settlements that are kind of reaching the border, touching into the northern portion of Chihuahua, Mexico. Their occupation of this area would have started around 200 AD and spanned to about 1150. Here's a timeline of Mimbres Mogollon culture. So this is also including some of the diagnostic characteristics that we would have seen per time period. So starting with the early pit house period, which would have started around 200 AD and lasted until around 550 AD. During this time, we see circular pit house structures, we see plain ceramics, and on occasion, we do see some red slip ceramics. Getting into the late pit house period from about 550 to 1000 AD, we start seeing rectangular pit houses replacing those circular pit houses. We also see the emergence of communal structures as well as some more elaborate ceramics. Now, getting into the classic Mimbres period, which would have been from around 1000 to 1150 AD, we start seeing a transition into surface structures, primarily masonry pueblos. We see the production of classic Mimbres black on white ceramics. And we also see a shift to more privatized practice, more so within plazas and kivas that would have been located near room blocks. So a little bit more about the classic Mimbres period. This would have been a period of fluorescence, also seen as the peak of Mimbres culture. As mentioned, we do see that transition from the pit houses to about above ground structures, hosting plazas. This would have marked the aggregation into villages as opposed to those widespread hamlets. During this time, they were also cultivating maize. A recreation of what a Mimbres settlement would have looked like can be seen in this image featured to the right-hand corner. This would have been a north view of Galas site. We also have some images of some ceramics over here, with the primary images being featured within classic Mimbres ceramics being geometric figures, anthropomorphic figures, as well as zoomorphic figures. So to talk a little bit more about the pottery during this period, I know I just touched on what type of designs were being frequently depicted. Going into the anthropomorphic imagery a little bit more, this would have been used as kind of a narrative image depicting scenes from ritual and practice, as well as scenes from popular oral traditions. There are two anthropomorphic, let me see if I can use the laser pointer here. So we see one anthropomorphic figure here, as well as one over here. These would have been examples of ritual taking place through narrative within the ceramic. And then this little guy, I understand it's kind of hard to see, but it is depicting a oral tradition that is believed to have been passed up from Mesoamerica, featuring two hero twins fighting a fish monster. We also have our geometric designs, which would have been more complex than what we see in earlier black on white styles. And we have our zoomorphic imagery. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about a lesser known figure, or lesser known types of figures, I suppose, that are depicted within this pottery style. We call them chimeras. They are usually organisms that host or display traits that are kind of pieced together that would typically be seen in multiple different creatures that are kind of pieced together to make one ceramic image. Getting into the origin stories and oral traditions, I want to start by saying that the Mimbres had depopulated the area before Spanish came in, meaning that most of what we have to go off of is mostly like what they were featuring as far as ceramic designs and motifs, and kind of relating that to some of the cultures that have oral traditions that have been better documented and transcribed. So that being said, one of the main things that's being depicted is the emergence into what we now know as the Fourth World, which is the Pueblo origin story. So the Pueblo, specifically the Hopi and the Zuni Pueblo, believed that there were three worlds that existed prior to the one that we currently occupy. The first world would have been a dark underworld type setting, which is said to have been primarily inhabited by insect-like creatures. The second world, we start having some evolution and we start taking on more larger animal forms such as wolves and bears. And while this world would have been seen as being better than the first, it also fell into decay. Next, we have the third world, which would have been inhabited by humans that weren't exactly exhibiting very good behavior, resulting in the end of that world. And with the emergence into the fourth world, it was humans that were deemed worthy through, for lack of a better term, their good behavior. And they came to this world through a pit known as Sipapu. Now, this current world that we live in, it's supposed to be full of more hardship as well as less initial beauty, but it is supposed to be designed to test humanity's ability to live in harmony with nature. And we have two examples of that origin story that are kind of depicted. One is an artistic depiction that is just an illustration, and the other one is an illustration of a Mimbres ceramic that we see over here with the people kind of emerging. It kind of looks a little counterintuitive. It looks like they're going into the pit, but they're supposed to be emerging from the pit. And then next, we're going to talk about the humpback flute player, also known as Cocopelli. This is a very popular Pueblo oral tradition with imagery frequently being depicted in multiple places, even in modern times. So the humpback flute player was originally a locust that had the ability to take on an anthropomorphic form. He is said to have a humpback because he is carrying the seeds of life in his back. So this would include plant seeds as well as human seeds. And he is seen as responsible for the ability to be able to produce crops as well as reproduce offspring, often being viewed as a symbol of fertility. Next, we will have the oral tradition of the dragonfly. It is a story where a dragonfly is carved out of wood by a small Pueblo boy and was granted a spirit. Using this spirit, he aids as a messenger between the gods, the spirits, and the humans by delivering messages between worlds, kind of serving as an emissary. I was not able to find any images for the oral tradition of Grandmother Spider, but she is seen in some variations of the creation story as being responsible for weaving the world into existence as well as creating humans. In other variations of the story, she is responsible for giving humans their diverse traits and kind of providing some variety amongst the human population, and is also responsible for the creation of the hero twins that were mentioned before that vanquish monsters and able to protect humanity. So now we're going to get into the insect imagery that we see featured within classic Mimbres ceramics. The most frequent depictions of insects in the ceramic style are going to be your antlions, usually in their larval form, which are also known as doodlebugs. We also see moths and butterflies being depicted. It's kind of hard to tell the difference based off of morphological traits with those. And we also see the appearance of grasshoppers and locusts. And the next image that's most frequently depicted would be dragonflies. I like to use that term a little bit loosely, and I will explain a little bit more why I use that term loosely as we move on. So these specific insects have pretty large roles within ecosystems, with adult antlions as well as butterflies and moths serving as pollinators, locusts and grasshoppers serving to break down organic matter to return nutrients into the soil. And all of the insects mentioned are important as they mimic aspects of oral traditions. At this point, you might be wondering what any of this has to do with anything. By depicting these insects from oral traditions, it's kind of a way of paying like an homage to the spirits from the stories through a form of imitative magic. Now, imitative magic is a form of sympathetic magic where the practitioner uses an object to influence an event, object, or being that the object being influenced resembles. A very good example of this would be the Hopi butterfly dance. This is a dance where unmarried Hopi female dancers dress as butterflies, along with adorning their regalia with symbols of their clan as well as the clan of their dance partners. So she would also be wearing what we call a kapatsiki, which is a headdress that is gifted to her by her dance partner, with the central figure on this headdress being the Miman Katsina. This dance is performed to express gratitude for the pollination of corn and also to help pray for rain. This dance mimics how butterflies dance through from flower to flower, and this would be a form of imitative magic. Antlions and Mimbres magic. So antlions go through a 4-stage metamorphosis, which I believe plays a role being tied to the belief that there are 3 worlds previous to ours, in addition to the one that we currently live in. So 4 worlds total in Pueblo mythology. I also believe that this mimics the 4 life stages that humans display, which could also place further significance over antlions due to their strong resemblance of aspects of human life and Mimbres cosmology. To get into this a little bit more and break it down step by step, as an egg, antlions are deposited into the ground and they await to emerge from that egg, which is kind of symbolic of spirits in the first world waiting to emerge into the second world, where it will then become a larva, where this larva is going to hatch underground and continue to live in the ground, but emerge from a pit, much like the story of Sipapu that humans were emerging from. It emerges from this pit to feed on smaller prey insects. Next, it'll move into its pupal form, where it will then encase itself into a ball of silk that it spins itself, and it will kind of entangle some grains of sand into that, creating a pupal casing. This is where it will undergo the necessary changes for it to enter that next life phase. We see some examples of this kind of being observable through Mimbres burials, where there's a similar positioning of the body, and it's in that underground burial context, much like the underworld. Next, we have the adult life form, which would be a winged insect. It then leaves its ground-dwelling habits behind, and it goes forth to pollinate. I think that it's important to bring up that antlions primarily pollinate at night, and this could be seen as symbolism for the afterlife or the darkness of the first world. So to talk about taxonomy and how this can tie into cultural roles a bit, we do see a high depiction of, again, what people commonly mistake for dragonflies due to the shape of the body and kind of how the wings are structured in the figures being depicted within these ceramics. So we have an example of a Mimbres bowl that most people label as a dragonfly imagery bowl. As we can see to the left over here, this is what an adult antlion looks like. And to the right over here, we have what an adult dragonfly looks like. So if you look at the ceramic vessel, the image being depicted within the vessel has visible antennae that elbow outward, much like the image of the antlion that I have featured over here to the left. So with antlions primarily living in the ground for most of their life, I believe that this ties very strongly into Pueblo origin stories. And I feel with the dragonfly, those properties aren't being embodied quite as much due to the fact that dragonflies, up until their adult phase, spend their time aquatically. So a little bit more into this argument that I'm making. We have the same imagery vessel from the previous slide next to its real life counterpart. And beneath it, we have an image of a dragonfly mid-flight, as well as some rock art that was taken from a Mimbres site. On the rock art, we can clearly see that there are no antennae being depicted, whereas in the Mimbres ceramic vessel, we do see the presence of antennae. This tells me that these depictions and the way that they were painted onto the ceramics and how they were drawn onto the rocks to create the rock art, they were deliberately leaving out antennae or placing antennae on the organism that they were depicting, which means that they may have recognized that there was a difference. And with antlions living in the same region and being easily observable, they may have noticed these similarities in the antlion life cycle and chosen intentionally to depict these images. So this is important, again, touching on that Pueblo origin story. The way that these antlions are carrying out their life cycle is very much so mimicking aspects of that Pueblo emergence story. Antlions, again, were commonly occupying this region, which may have led to a more easily observed environment where these humans could have interacted with them. So tying oral traditions into antlion imitative magic. So we have three types of imitative magic that I have been able to observe through my research so far. The first and most obvious one is going to be the images being depicted within the Mimbres black on white ceramics. This is going to be primarily larval antlions that are going to be kind of reenacting that emergence story through their behaviors and living in their pit, and that being resemblant of Sipapu. Next, we get into architecture. With this is going to get kind of muddy. So there are different features in Southwestern archaeology that we recognize as Sipapus. You have the initial roof opening into a kiva that is known as a Sipapu, where people are descending into the kiva for their ceremonial happenings or their gatherings, to kind of like a middle world. And from there, we do kind of have instances where people are interned underneath the kiva floor. That would be kind of serving as an underworld. We do see features in the kiva on the floor where they have been intentionally carved out into almost like another pit-like structure that are also known as sipapus. So there are multiple features within Pueblo archaeology that we do use the same name for. Next, we're going to get into the burials with the interment taking place underneath the floor. That is, again, resemblant of the underworld, which they're in this position. It's almost like a upright fetal position. And if you were to take a pupal casing, the position that the pupal antlion is within the casing is very similar to the way that these individuals are being interred. So back to the ceramics. There are very frequent depictions of larval antlions, as well as what I believe to be adult antlions based off of morphological traits. These are often being used in burial context. Approximately 1/3 of all insect imagery bulls are found in a burial context, and they're displaying little to no signs of wear outside of that context, which indicates to me that they may have been produced solely for the reason of being used in burial ritual. Now, within these ceramics, we also observe what we know as kill holes, where an intentional hole is made within the ceramic vessel to then release the spirit that is being embodied within that vessel so that it can accompany the deceased into the afterlife. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about sipapus and architecture. Again, we have these two features that I'm going to be talking about that are referred to as sipapus. The first instance is that kind of opening that's at the top of the kiva, which is going to be right here. This would be that sipapu where they would come down into the kiva to have their gatherings in what we would kind of recognize as a middle world, which would be the ground level. And then below ground, you would have your underworld. Now, this middle image right here depicts antlion pits. And this might just be my opinion, but I feel that they have a very strong resemblance to the sea papus that are being dug out into the ground. So this would kind of serve as a form of imitative magic where they're mimicking that behavior and applying it to architectural structures. And then with ceremonies and rituals, this would be an example of a classic Mimbres burial. And over here, we have a pupal casing with a pupal antlion inside. So these both would be found below ground level. These would both be deeper into the ground, kind of symbolizing that underworld. This could be seen with the Mimbres burials as being returned to the underworld from the origin story. And the antlion metamorphosis position, again, is similar to how these individuals are being interred. While I do not have very much evidence backing this just yet, this is mostly theoretical. I am doing more research into this currently. I believe that this might have been observed due to the hypervigilance of antlion behavior based on the shared traits that they have with the Pueblo origin story. Now we're going to talk about the adult antlions and how this ties into cosmology. So adult antlions, again, are known pollinators, primarily pollinating at night. This may have mythological ties to the underworld through imitative conditions between the darkness of night and the darkness of the underworld. Their winged nature would grant them the ability to fly, which may be seen as reflective of the journey of human spirits and what they undergo as they transcend into rain clouds. With many Pueblo cultures, they have this belief that when an individual dies, that their soul goes on and becomes a rain cloud, where they can then produce rain that would then nourish the crops so that they could have a successful crop yield, as well as have water that are necessary to carry out their life in the very inhospitable southwestern deserts. So by taking on this adult form, the antlions would in turn be kind of picking up on those aspects where they can transcend this world into a above ground kind of lifestyle where they can go forth and help create the necessary conditions to produce plant and crop yield. So some concluding statements over antlions and Mimbres cosmology. Overall, antlions serve as symbols of human origin, emergence, and different phases of life, leading to their use through imitative magic, surrounding ceramic depictions, architecture, as well as ritual practice in Mimbres culture. The use of kill holes in antlion imagery pottery may indicate that they held a special significance through ties to the first world as well as the afterlife, through their utilization as burial offerings. They may have also been symbolic of the completion of the human life cycle, as well as the transcendence of spirits into the afterlife. Getting into some contemporary practice that may have been passed down as the members took on new identities. Insects are still being depicted in contemporary Pueblo ceramics, as well as being used in ritual. We see very many instances of this within the Acoma Pueblo, the Hopi, as well as the Zuni Pueblo. We see this through Katsina dances, butterfly dances as well, and also through the depiction of Katsina dolls. So these are still being imitated and used for contemporary purposes. Next, I would like to thank Dr. Walker, Dr. Para, Dr. Berryman, as well as Tuesday Crits for helping me with my research and being able to get to this point so that I can present what I have with all of you. And I guess at this time, we're open to questions.
Okay, well, thank you, Sammi. I found that very interesting, particularly in terms of how antlions were incorporated into Pueblo culture as distinct from dragonflies. I never really thought there was a difference. I never knew anything about antlions before dragonflies, but it was interesting to know that there is a distinction, and they chose antlions. They were smart enough to figure that they were the ones.
Right.
Okay, we have let's see if we've got any chat. Any questions? One from
Uh,
John Rich. Did they have cockroaches in prehistoric times?
I'm sure they
I
did.
bet they did.
they've
They've
been here
been around for
forever.
years.
Right.
Well, along
Did
the
you?
same lines what John is asking, prior to them doing insects, did the pottery follow another phase where they were doing some other animals or some other morphological? Uh, you know what I'm talking about? When you get into
Yes.
2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago in the same area, what were they putting on their pottery then before they
Right.
transitioned
So
into the insects?
before we start seeing the production of classic Mimbres black on white or style 3, we do have earlier styles of black on white ceramics. So we have style 1, also known as boldface black on white, where most of the depictions that were being made were geometric designs. And that can also be said for the transitional style, which is style 2.
Okay.
What about you did show one slide, I remember, with petroglyphs. Is there a lot of
Yes.
insects in the petroglyphs also, or?
We do have a ton of insect petroglyphs, not even like not just in the Mimbres, but also throughout the entire Mogollon territory.
Okay, very good.
Okay. We have another message on chat from Dan Massey. Have you done any examination of artistic representations of insects? Just move that in adjacent contemporary cultures, either in rock art or pottery.
So I am looking at rock art depictions in other areas of the Mogollon territory. I'm planning on doing a little bit of research throughout the Jornada branch of the Mogollon, as well as kind of looking into this really popular rock art site known as Three Rivers. I went out there on a family trip over the summer and was able to get some really awesome images that I hope to look into a little bit more on a more in-depth scale.
Okay, the questions are coming in now. Let me get them in order. Uh, okay,
Betsy's the
Heather.
next one.
Heather says it
Uh,
has a comment about cockroaches, saying yes, they all moved into my museum.
Oh no. That's
um,
unfortunate.
let me see who else has said something. Dan, I've got Dan, John Rich. Okay, okay. I won't say anything about what John's comment was. It was about some Europeans introducing cockroaches, but um, and
That
he's
is
probably
true.
and he's
That is true.
okay. He was true. He said I thought maybe the Spaniards introduced them. Maybe they
Um,
did. They introduced Europeans introduced quite a few nasty things.
we have some German roaches as well as Turkish roaches that were brought
Oh,
into the area that are seen as invasive. So not too far off.
okay. Heather has a follow up. Actually, uh, MCB has some rope from La Belle that houses cockroach remains. Perhaps we can blame the French.
that's
That's all.
Museum of the Coastal Bend,
Go
Bob.
bend. Okay, yeah. Betsy Wittenmeyer. Hey, Betsy, you're here. Your argument of the Antlion lifespan correlating to ancient cosmology and the material cultural imagery makes sense. Um, are you the first to deduce this, or are you finding more similar opinions?
I would love to find more similar opinions on this, honestly. I don't know if anybody else has really looked into it before. If so, if they could please send help, that would be great because
Hey, yeah.
I don't have a lot of background information on this to be looking into. So a lot of this is stuff that I've had to put together myself, and it does leave some room for me to like question my own thoughts and sanity at times.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I have a question. Are other cultures outside the Mogollon using insects in their depictions on their pottery? Or is it just a very localized culture?
So I haven't looked as far as prehistoric cultures using them quite as frequently, but I do know that in contemporary pottery styles, they are becoming a lot more frequently depicted.
Okay. Is that
Okay.
because they've observed insects having similar life cycles, do you think?
With butterfly imagery, that does tend to be the case. As far as other insects, I would have to look into a little bit more, but I do know that with different cultures that have oral traditions that revolve around insects or have insects within them, it is not uncommon for these depictions to be made.
So the metamorphosis is a very central theme then in what they do.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, another one from John Rich. He's got a giant water bug type insect in Lower Pecos area. There you
Oh,
go.
that's really interesting.
That's nice. Okay.
Water bugs are awesome. They're usually predatory too, so it's really like fun to observe them, and it would be really cool to see how they tie in culturally.
Okay, Adriana Cardenia. Mimetic practice. What is mimetic practice? You have to explain to us what that is, or me anyway. Is a new lens for me. The Mimbres took careful observation of the natural world and used artistic imitation of insect behaviors to express ecological knowledge, social values, and a relational worldview rather than literal magical control. Absolutely flabbergasted. Thank you for this presentation.
Thank you. I'm really
Excellent.
happy that you were able to watch, and it really helped me grow as a master's student because I'm going to be having to do this probably again really soon.
I reckon so, yeah. Another one from Michael Pynchon. With kivas being sacred places, are there rules for outsiders to follow to gain entry?
I'm not too sure how to answer that one. That is something that I would have to look into.
I understand that it's very
I would say
restrictive.
yes.
That from everything I've heard, it's very restrictive to get outsiders coming into your kiva.
I would agree.
Yes.
Yeah. Debbie, during excavations, have you found many insect exoskeletons? And if so, how do you proceed in order to preserve them for study?
So when I was going through field school, we weren't really focusing too much on the remains left behind by insects. A lot of the time, when you're starting the excavation and you're at surface level, it's kind of hard to differentiate what's recent with what would have been left behind from before, especially with the amount of bugs in this area that burrow. I eventually would love to be able to do some excavations and see what I can find and see if there would be a way to kind of place a date on that so that we can kind of get an idea as to what roles and like how they played into the preservation of a site or otherwise.
So
Okay.
yeah, because if you find them in context, then you can date them to a certain period. I just know
Exactly.
that in Texas Panhandle, there have been some exoskeletons found. Um,
Right.
and it takes somebody who knows enough about insects to be able to identify them. And that, to me, that would be really neat. But I wonder, you know, uh, most of the excavations where they're heavily wooded, a lot of that stuff, that organic material is gone. But I just always wonder, are we missing some, you know?
Right.
Hmm.
Are you talking about the excavations that were taking place with Texas State University by chance?
Um, no, this was up in, no, I don't think so. It was up in the northern panhandle.
Okay.
Um, trying to think of their name. It's on a ranch up there. Charles Frederick was up there. It's on a ranch. The guy's a famous author of kids' books,
Okay.
and all of a sudden, but they've done some excavations there and have found some. So it was just it was always interesting to me because I always think, what are we missing? If we
Right.
if we don't look, and obviously we're not going to find that sort of thing usually. About the only thing we find are the hard balls of clay.
Yes,
that have
those like
encased
pupal
them.
casings from other insects,
Yep.
right? Yeah,
Yep.
no, I know Texas State University recently did a interdisciplinary research where they were doing some excavations and they had some professional entomologists that came in to help with something similar that they had going on. I would love to get something like that going here. Mostly when I was digging, I was told, Sammy, don't play with the bugs. But
I know. It just feels like we're missing something there, but yeah.
Okay, John
definitely.
Rich says there are public parks where you can go inside Kivas. I guess you're going to have to be supervised before you do that, but I guess people need to, if they're interested, they can go and find out on the internet. From Betsy again, Betsy Whitmire, do you know Carolyn Boyd and her work at Shumla in the Lower Pecos? She might be a good resource for you.
I will definitely look into that. I have heard the name before. I'm not familiar with the research.
She's put a link in the chat if you want to
Oh,
check out the
perfect.
chat, which is
Hold
sent
on a
to.
second, Bob.
I think it's
Dan
been sent.
Massey, are you still there?
Oh, did I miss Dan?
No, well, Dan's on the board down at Shumla. I was going to have him
Oh,
introduce himself
oh yeah.
to Sammy if he was still here.
Yeah,
Oh, I think he just dropped off.
Did he
Oh,
drop
there he
off?
is.
He's there.
There he is. There he is.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yeah, we can hear you, Dan.
Yes.
Yeah, Carolyn just came out with a new paper about 4 months ago, 3 months ago that kind of ties a lot of these things together. It might be worth looking. I think it may be open access. If not, you could reach out to me or her, and she'd be happy to get you a copy.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'll
Sammy,
take anything that I can get, anything related to this topic, because it has been hard.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
Sammy,
As I
I'll
say,
send you
there's
Dan's email address as soon as we get off here tonight. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Sammy,
much.
Sammy, as I say, there's a link in the chat which you should be able to see and have access to.
Okay.
Okay, one more from John. Oh, another one. Okay, Betsy says one way I think you might benefit from meeting Carolyn is how she went deep into Mexico and met with leaders of ancient religious practices that helped her develop theories of the Pecos imagery. So get with Carolyn Boyd from Shumla.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we've got the Rock Art Academy next month. So I'll be out to Hueco Tanks then, and I'll be looking.
That's like
for
right
some
around our
bugs.
neck of the woods.
I'll send you pictures if I find any bugs.
Definitely. That would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, that's. Oh, I've got any more in the chat that I missed? Can't see any. Did you see any more, Frank?
No, I think we covered everything here.
Okay. Well, good. I thought that was a great presentation.
Thank you so much.
I do
I
too.
think-
Thank you,
I think
Sammy.
you're going
That
to
was
do well,
great.
Sammy. I think you'll do well.
Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Great.
I guess that's the end of the meeting. Let's wrap it up. I'd like to wish everyone a very pleasant evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sammy. We
Guys,
appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey,
Thank
Sammy,
you.
Mom. Bye.
Oh, gosh.
Mom liked
We'll
it.
see you later, Mom.
Yeah. Love to your mom.
Okay, talk to you tomorrow.
All right, everybody take care. We'll see you next month.
Okay, let's kill the recording.
I got